All right, I remember coming into 2023 with so much expectation. And a friend of mine said, you are dancing too much. Remember how we entered 2020 and we were all dancing. In 2 months' time, we started dealing with COVID. And then we danced as well in 2021 and we started dealing with ASU strike. Don't dance too much now because we don't know what this year will hold. And I told her I subscribed to the fun and merriment package from heaven for this year. So yesterday she called me and said she wants to be sure, do I have cash? I said I don't have. We say, please call heaven now and be sure that you did not subscribe to trials and tribulation package. You know, it was very funny, but we're going through a lot. See, if you see a Nigerian somewhere today, just hug them and say Jesus loves you, because we're going through a lot. It seems like it's from one issue to another. Good afternoon, welcome to Flipside today. My name is Daisy Leo Asikidi, your host on the show, but I will sincerely apologize for the time we came on to start off the show today. We had a little issue, plus the program before. I'm sure you had fun with Don General. We had to clear the stage and all of that stuff. But we're here now, and it's definitely going to be a swell time on the show. So we're talking about protests on Flipside today. It's no news that we're always protesting about something. Lecturers are protesting about salaries. Doctors are protesting about salaries. Oh, patients abuse them. Nurses are on strike. And so after the strike, they protested that you didn't pay them. Or there's a family protesting that their child was abused somewhere. Or if it's not that one, we're protesting about Naira. We're protesting about fuel. We're always protesting. There's from one to another. So we need to talk about protest. And the way I've taught protests are, in recent times, seem like my thoughts on it are wrong, because I'm seeing things happening and I don't know if this is protest or if it's a riot or what's going on. Is it that we've missed it somewhere? How should protest indeed be done? Before you join a protest, what should you know? You just see them block road, you just come outside and carry stones and sticks, or you just go and block your own street and say, any driver passing here, give me money. We need to be informed, and that's what we'll be doing here on Flipside. For those who do not know, there have been protests. There were lots of protests last week because of the crash crunch. People were looking for cash, they couldn't find it, deposited their monies in the banks and they couldn't get it. That protest degenerated to a blown problem, and banks were destroyed. I don't know if you've gone to your bank today to get money across the counter. My own is locked. They are not opening and I don't know when they'll open. But for those who are not aware, maybe you came from Mars, we'll just play the reports as a catch-up before you meet my guest and we get talking.
Jesus, why did I go to work today? Why did I come to work today?
Obavuame Square in Benin City was rowdy as traders and other residents abandoned their activities to besiege the Benin branch of Central Bank of Nigeria, demanding why their old Naira notes should rot in their hands. Various commercial banks were shut down to forestall attack by angry customers. That did not deter the mob, who vented their anger on facilities of banks, destroying them. However, attempts by some protesters to break into the First Bank of Nigeria on Obavuame Square, Benin City, were thwarted by security personnel. Some of the protesters who decried high level of hardship said it was tragic to have cash bought at a high rate and one cannot afford goods and services because of rejection, while the new Naira notes are not available even in the banks.
How can you say that Nigeria has 3 trillion currency out there and you want to replace it? You are bringing only 300 billion. To print more money with the years that say they don't get paper again. So you don't get paper to print new money and you want to change up money.
I go to buy something, I give them money, they sell for me. They tell me say they collect money. Then they collect my money. I stop and get this money. I don't see good job. See money. No use it. No use
Despite the tense situation, the security personnel at the scene stayed back and remained resolute to calm frayed nerves and appeal for peace. Benin City residents have taken over the popular Obavoroman Square in Benin City, protesting over the inability to access the new Naira note and the hike in the price of petrol. It is, however, expected that relevant government agencies will wake up to their responsibility. Ameliorating their plight from Obavoroman Square in Benin City. Wellington Akodija reporting.
All right, so that's just a tip of the iceberg. We didn't show you everything that actually went down. But if you live in Benin and you go round Benin City, you see that there's hardly any bank that did not collect, you know. We don't know. At some point, we're wondering, is it the fault of the banks? Is it the fault of the CBN? Who's at fault here? Is it the POS people that are just cashing out unnecessarily? Yesterday, I tried to withdraw, and I was told that I will pay 4,000 naira for the 10K I want to withdraw. So they'll give me 6K cash. I went to market like that, so see me pricing plantain 500 naira, and I told Madam, you go take transfer. But we've gotten to that level. But beyond the Naira issue, protests are things that actually happen. I have two special guests in the studio with me that will be talking about this with me. Far from me, the only man in the studio right now, I have Dr. Charles Egwere. Now, when he told me his name, I naturally just assumed it was Benin. So I was ready to spell it the regular Ewe, you know. But he's a doctor and is done his PhD, of course. That's why he's a doctor, not medical doctor now, in political science. Good to have you here. Now, there's a lady here that you've seen on FLIPSIDE at least 2-3 times. Yeah, I'm talking about our barrister doctor. No medical doctor, PhD. Now, let me never do PhD. I'm going to go do mine now. I'm talking about Elizabeth Yamojo. She's here again today. She's from FIDA. When you hear her on the show, usually we just bring her because she's with FIDA. Apart from FIDA, we know there are rights, human rights lawyers for the female lawyers. She's a lawyer and she's an activist, and so that's why we've brought her here today. And it's good to have you once again on the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Okay. I'm going to start with my brand new guest, Teraba. I've not had him on FLIPSIDE today before. So, Dr. Charles, I would just ask, what is protest? Why should people protest? And is it different from a riot? What makes it different from a riot? So that those who are protesting can know if what they're doing is a protest or if it's a riot.
Thank you so much for having me in your program. The question is simple: what is protest and what is riot? Well, both of them share similarities,
Okay.
in that they are ways people express their grievances towards what government is doing, plan to do, all that stuff. But the only difference between protest and riot, protest is organized. Organized in a manner that those behind it are informed. They have a definite demand they are making on the government or the system as it were. And they go peacefully in most cases. People protesting, coming with placards, demanding things. It could be that maybe a particular road in an environment or an area is bad and the government not paying attention. You can go with placards, fix our road, do this. That's protest. But riot is, we can safely say it's a perversion of protest. In that it has similarity, so much similarity with mob rule. People who have grievances, but they spontaneously react in a manner that is oftentimes distorted. And riot they often don't have either. They have, that spontaneous reaction. People move in the same direction. They have a very limited knowledge of what they are protesting about, what they are rioting about, and oftentimes they go in the way of destruction. So the similarity is that it's a grievance generally. Grievance towards a system that is oppressive, that is unbearable, that is not tolerated by the people. But the manner of lashing out is what differentiates protest from
Right. Okay, at least thank God for this topic, because I now learned many things. I learned what riot is, I learned what protest was, I learned what was an audience, what was a procession. You know, all of them have their different meanings and the right usage for them. But Dr. Yamu, what should people know before they start up a protest? Because these days it's almost as if everybody's just protesting. Now, last week during the protest for the Naira issue, as I was coming to work, I wasn't aware there was a protest. I just left the house, I didn't check the news, entered the road, and I got halfway and we were told start trekking. So we got into an adjoining street and saw boys gathered collecting money. So I just said, okay, let me be a journalist and ask questions like, what did they happen? Why they block? I don't know. To pass it, I go pay. Just like that. But are there information people should know before they start up a protest or even join the protest?
Essentially, I believe people should know that riots are not a good way to ventilate their grievances. Nigeria is our own. Edo State is our own. If you get into a riot and you go in a rampage, leaving havoc behind you as you go, you're not doing anything to salvage the situation. You're not helping anything. For instance, yes, the grievance that people had last week was germane. The cash crunch, you have money in your bank accounts. You can't withdraw your own money to feed your children. Your children are starving before your very eyes. It's a germane grievance. And so it's something that you should agitate for. But a riot is not the way to go at all. Because at the end of the day, we see what has happened. They've destroyed most banks and the banks are no longer working at all. So you don't even have the place to go to. So it's like exactly from frying pan to fire. And this has not helped the issue at all. But if they had ventilated these issues in a peaceful protest, the world would have seen. And I'm sure that President Buhari would have done exactly the same thing that he did. So we cannot be certain that because you went on a riot, you got results better than if you had gone on a peaceful protest.
Okay, but even now that the End-House protest in Lagos was relatively peaceful, it was very coordinated. That was a protest.
Yeah.
You know, it took time, results. In fact, that protest has yielded results that generations to come, people are still going to talk about it. Yeah. You see the way youths are gathered today, getting PVCs, is because of that protest. But then again, as peaceful as that protest was, we saw the lights go off at the Lekki toll gates. We saw videos where people were shot at, even though it's been denied, the matter is in court, it's just bus goes up and down. But what's the role of security operatives in a protest?
Well, two ways you can look at it. One, you must look at an ideal situation and the perverted version of what we have. In an ideal situation, the duty of security operatives is to protect those protesting, ventilating their anger, you know, in the most civil and acceptable manner. Because those ventilating their anger, they have right to ventilate their anger. You know, they are expected to be protected against harm within themselves and from external forces. You know, but that is an ideal situation. But in a perverted system where a lot has happened, you know, imagining our evolution from the military dictatorship that we had over a period of time before we came into the democratic era. So we can easily say that we've not really shielded the military mentality. So government's response to the most peaceful protest is to backhand those who have strong will to pull their agenda. Not necessarily agenda to undermine the state, but to have the state do what is needed. And so Lekki toll gate and the invasion and the killing we eventually told was because government saw that these people are resolved to have a change of system. But the only way government could do that is allegedly to invade them, organize them, to dematerialize the very foundation of their protest. So, but naturally, it's the responsibility of security agents to protect protesters against harm within themselves and harm from others.
Interesting. Okay, now, there were videos for that Lekki protest. Let me still use the NSAS protest as a basis. And one of the persons who recorded that video, she had to run away from Nigeria for a while. So I don't even know if she's back. I don't think she's back. She had to run. You know, these operatives most times are giving instructions from their bosses to go carry out an assignment that's maybe to protect the protesters, but in some cases they even hurt the protesters. In Benin, people were killed, people died. I don't know if they shot both people, because there was one who was the delivery guy. I didn't see any blood stains on the body. It's almost as if maybe the tear gas, he reacted to it. I don't know, that's just speculations, but 2 people confirmed lost their lives in that protest, and one of them was shot at. If it's a protester or a rioter, I don't know. But I would ask the lawyer this one. Do you think, what's my right as a protester? And if I am rioting, do I have a right to be protected if it's a riot? That's on the one hand. And I'm also going to ask you, if I feel like the security operatives have infringed on my right, will I get redress if instructions came to them from up above? But before you answer all of that, I'll go on a short break. When we return, we have Barrister Yamo talk to us. All right, we're back, and I'm just go right to Barrister Yamo.
Okay, so firstly, I would say that protesters have rights. Their rights are enshrined in the Constitution. Their rights are subsumed in the fundamental human rights. For instance, Section 38, the freedom of thought, conscience and religion. Section 39, the freedom of expression. Section 40, Section 41 on freedom of liberty, movement, and a host of other rights. We even have the right to life. The right to protest is subsumed within all these rights. But in particular, Principle 1 of the resolution on the promotion and protection of human rights in the context of protest says that people are entitled to protest. They have the right to protest. And in the course of that protest, they can disrupt other people. They can barricade the roads. They can cause annoyance to other people, third parties. So it's within their rights to, even though those third parties do not agree on their own ideas, but it's their right to. Principle 2 talks about the fact that the state is entitled to, is supposed to protect them. The state is also to protect them not only against themselves, but also to protect them against other protesters. So if we have a group like the NSAS protest now, they were fighting for good governance, they were fighting for an end to corruption, they were fighting for an end to police brutality, and a host of other things. And then the thugs, the higher thugs came. What we saw was that the law enforcement agencies, they folded their hands and they watched them fight and destroy them, which was not supposed to be so. The state had the responsibility under Principle 2 to ensure that both parties do not clash. They separate them. That's why you see in foreign countries, you see their protests. Their law enforcement agencies are standing right there. They stay in between the protesters. On this side, they are saying, go this, go that. And the other side, they are saying, go this, go that. They are fighting each other. They are protesting against different things. But the police, the law enforcement agents, they know what their duty is. Our law enforcement agents, they don't know what their duties are. They are still using the colonial mentality. That colonial mentality that made them, pitted them against the Nigerian masses and made them stooges to the government. They forget that they are there to serve and protect the Nigerian people. And the state governments, state government, the country, they've forgotten about the social contracts. The social contract is where the people donated powers to them, ceded powers to them, not to be their masters, but to be their slaves, to protect them, to serve them. So it's a misplacement of roles. a misplacement of priorities, and it's a very sad situation in Nigeria.
But if we can get it on record that this security operative has infringed on my rights,
Yes.
can I get redress even if he got instructions from his superior?
For instance, some of those victims now, I particularly saw a picture where a bullet was lodged in one leg. Now, a forensic examination will be able to tell whose bullet that was, if it was the bullet of the police officers or not. So such a person can file for fundamental human rights enforcement against the police force. Because in a protest of such a nature, the police are not supposed to use live cartridges. They are not supposed to use live ammunitions. They are supposed to use things like tear gas, things that would calm the people down or make them disperse, but nothing to harm them. So it was an aberration for them to use live cartridges. And those people have rights against the government. Yes, you sue the government. The government, particularly in the light of the fact that you have rights, you sue them and go test the courts. Let's see if the courts will not rule in your favor. Because at the end of the day, no lawyer is capable of saying this is how the courts will rule. That will be taking the role of the judge away from them. But the judge will be the one to eventually decide on the preponderance of evidence that you have given to the courts. Do you have your rights been infringed? Should the government be culpable? Let the courts decide. So we should test the waters, really.
Interesting. Okay, you know, we even had those arguments in the studio between my colleagues. It wasn't on air. And someone said the security operatives at the CBN, they had rights to use the guns with live ammunition. That someone said, I can't remember which of them exactly said, these were not protesters. They were riots and they were trying to steal. So they were thieves. Another one said they were armed robbers. I said, were they holding arms? But anyway, we're not lawyers. We're just talking, we're not learned colleagues. Okay, now.
We can only read, we're not learned.
Yeah, we're not learned. Okay, I'm going to ask this one. It's a personal question. What would you advise people to do when they want to embark on a protest to ensure that their protest isn't hijacked? Because we have still not been able to deal with that situation. It happened with NSAS. The youth have noticed that, okay, you could start up a protest and some people just come from nowhere and mess it all up. But are there ways we can ensure we carry out this protest peacefully, if that's what we intend, without it being disrupted at some point?
Well, it's possible, very possible. Two ways we can handle that. One is to reawaken the missing link. The civil society, the link between the civil society, the people and government is completely be obliterated. Ideally, in a normal society, the civil society is able to articulate the needs of the people, interface with government, and present the needs to government with a view to addressing them peacefully without resorting to riot or protest. Alternatively, if we go the route of individual enlightenment, that will take a long time. You know, because the civil society, you know, platform should give the people the needed orientation, information, how step-by-step way of engaging with the government. By so doing, the people will be naturally equipped with the information they needed to embark on anything. So that if there is a grievance to be ventilated, you have a channel of doing it. One protest letter, which you can deliver to the governor, to the local government chairman, to whoever is representing you, you know, and they will know that the people are already aware. The people have a grievance that must be addressed, to be followed up subsequently, and you see government acting. But if you take the individual route of you enlightening yourself, it's going to be it will take a long time to do.
Okay.
You know, but it's very possible for the people to be informed on what's happening, on how to go about it, so that they can avoid destructive actions like riots.
Seems like you disagree at some.
To be honest, I feel like the government of the day has a very large role to play. I disagree with him in the context of sending letters and doing stop chains, and then the government of the day will do the needful. We have experienced that. Thankfully, he's a lecturer, I'm a lecturer, and we have experienced this stuff happening over and over again. For instance, I know for a fact that before ASU embarks on a strike, ASU does not just wake up one morning and say, I'm going on a strike. ASU writes letters, ASU holds meetings, ASU does several things. It is when ASU is tired, has met a brick wall several times, that they call and say, let's down tools. And even we experienced it in the last 8 months. Even after they down tools for 5 months, there was no response. So at the end of the day, I feel that whatever it is, whether these things will go peacefully, whether due process can be followed and then protests are resolved amicably, they will only happen if we have a responsible and responsive government. If we do not have a responsible and responsive government, they don't care about the social contract they signed with the people. They are masters to the people. So they only think of their selfish ends. And so I don't see, the only way that such things will happen is if we have a responsible and responsive government. A government that listens and acts upon it. That's my take.
Okay, well, apart from protests, are there other ways we can make our voices heard? Because yes, the letters, but I'm really not keen about protest as a person. Personal opinion though, I have never been in a protesting about anything. So maybe something has not prepared me enough to protest. But I'm always at the end where there's a protest on the road and I have to sweat and suffer. So because of that, I'm so unhappy. Now, the NSAS protest, I remember that I slept on the road. I finished from work, see my office, see my house, it's so close. And I was very secure at the fact that I'm not going towards Mingate. So Mingate is a no-go area. It's just down Oluku here. I'll just pass, I'll just get home. I got to Oluku market and I even saw the guy I buy meat from at that market. I saw my customers were the ones even holding sticks. I thought, okay, you wait here, madam, go back, and you need to see their faces. We were on that spot till dawn. It was 5 a.m. They finally let people pass, and I rushed home, had my bath. I had to rush back to work. Nobody knew I slept on the road. The work must go on. So I'm always unhappy about protests because they block the roads and I suffer too much. But apart from protesting, do you think if we don't carry placards, if we don't break things, if we don't do this, our voices will be heard?
Well, protest is normally to address a future challenge. I say that to mean that those saddled with responsibility of managing the public affairs, those saddled with government authority. You know, all the protests we've had since 2020 till now signpose one thing, that those in government do not care about you. So the best way we can, the alternative route to having government change in our own favor is to be in government. That's where political education comes in. You know, where people should now be able to either be involved in the political process themselves, to contest an office and seek to change the process in their own favor, or be politically conscious to make balanced decisions that will benefit you. Now we're around the election period, few days to the election. So many of us do not even have PVC. So many of us still want to vote along ethnic or religious line. You know, so beside protests, if we are involved in the political process, you know, from the ward level to the highest office, you know, the moment you are involved in the process, you will be eligible to seek office. And once you are in, because you know where you are coming from, you know the pains, you wear the shoes, you know where it pinches, you'll be able to make decisions that would affect the people. It may not be, you know, holistic changes, but with time, people of like minds coming in, dominating government, the policies will favor all, and it will gradually reduce protest. Not that it will obliterate protest as it were, but it will reduce it to the barest minimum. Because like minds coming in will make government more human. What we have at the moment is government that is isolated from the reality of the people. You know, they benefit themselves, they privatize public enterprise to the detriment of the suffering mass public. So it's a long route to freedom, but it's a sure way of minimizing protest.
All right.
Yes.
I would ask you now this, before we go on a break quickly. The people who block streets during protests, even though whether they are aware of what's happening or not, in fact, I don't know. They are just there collecting money from people before they can pass. What can we do about them? Because nobody is even looking at that area in all of these issues. Nobody talks about it. Sometimes it's not even about protest. Sometimes maybe the major road is bad. There's a repair going on. So you need to take an alternative route. As you just enter the road, you just see boys gathered. You pay to pass. No cash to ourselves makes our matters worse. You will stand, say. So what can we do to deal with that, address that issue?
I think the problem is patriotism. People still do not know that they are Nigerians. They don't have that feeling of Nigerianness. For instance, you are protesting over something. The person you are tasking is suffering the same problem. You understand? So I think we need to do a lot of sensitization over and over again. We need to let them know that these things are wrong. You know, in the heat of that protest, it might not be the right time to go and use police officers to pick them up. It will only escalate issues. But I think we need to do a lot of sensitization. We need to talk more about it. We need to let them know that the people you are blocking their roads and you're saying don't go home like you slept on the road, you're suffering the same pains as them.
Yeah, sorry.
Excuse me. So if they are Nigerians and they have that Nigerianness, they realize that it's a we situation against the government.
All right, we're talking about protests in our nation, and it's not something that's going to stop now. The only fears I have is not just because it won't be stopping anytime soon, it's because I fear it's going to keep getting worse. And people have learned that they can benefit from protest, and that's the reason why they'll keep making it a big issue. So people gather to protest. You just see that like 5 different locations people already protest. Okay, some group of thugs will just say, okay, let's cash out, let's quickly do this one, let's loot, let's break stores, let's make people run. All right, if security operatives, in fact, I'm so afraid that a time will come where the security operatives are using their live ammunition to disperse the crowds. They will be so resistant and they will be shooting back. I'm that scared that it's going to get to that stage if we don't do something to curb it. But we're almost ending the show, and I'm just going to let my guests have their last words on this and give their last counsel to either the governments, the security operatives, the protesters, the civil society, I don't know, but I'll just let them have their concluding statements. I'll start with you so that she can still catch her breath. Feel free to cough. It's a live studio. We can cough. It's natural. All right.
Yeah, thank you. We shouldn't hope that protests will be eliminated totally. The only thing is for government to realize that there's fire on the mountain. Those in government positions should realize that the people are watching. You know, the more government can be alive to their responsibility, the lower the volume of protests we will see. As for the civil society benchmark, the platform of civil society is very vital for every society. You know, because it's difficult for the people uninformed to have that direct interaction with government. You know, you see them as unorganized. They don't have the idea of organized. It's the civil society that should be able to crystallize their needs, put them in an articulate manner, show them to government. But what we have had so far, because it's favoring government, it's easier for government to remove that link between the government and the people, to make it easier for the people to be exploited. And unfortunately, very unfortunately, you have some unscrupulous element within the civil society group that uses the link between the government and the people to enrich themselves. So rather than serving a very useful channel between government and the people, it's being used for selfish interests. You know, and for the people, we should be able to acquire knowledge and be well informed. And for security operatives, training and retraining cannot be rolled out. Because the idea of using live ammunition to disperse protesters or rioters doesn't really count. It shouldn't be held in civilized society like ours. But if they are trained, they will know the appropriate tool to use. They know the appropriate measure to use, from water cannon to canisters, you know, to barricading, instead of using live weapons. This is barbaric.
Okay. All right.
I would say that good governance would reasonably reduce protests.
Yes.
And for us to have good governance, our government agents need to stop being selfish and self-centered. In the past couple of days, we have seen people giving out millions of naira free in this cash crunch time, just because they have hoarded monies that they cannot finish using in their own lifetime. They should realize that whatever monies they've hoarded, whatever unjust enrichment they have gained, they don't make their children stronger. They actually make their children weak, selfish, self-centered, and they cannot even hold on to the riches that they have kept for their children.
They'll sell it.
So having said that, they should think first about the people that put them into power. It beats my imagination how much ill-gotten wealth you can't stop amassing more and more, and your people are hungry. You understand? So I'm still going to focus on the government agencies, and I'm going to plead with them. Please stop being selfish and self-centered. Please have a care for the people that voted you into power. Even if you amass, you let go of half of the wealth you have gained. Like somebody like Dino Melaye now, he shows his cars. He shows his cars on air. He shows his wristwatches. He shows his luxury. How many of these can you actually ride? Can you use? But the masses are suffering, and you have the audacity to come out there and say you are a nice person, you are a honest politician.
So some might disagree with you that it's nice, some might agree with you that it might not be. Those who benefit from these people do not complain about them.
Yes, but I'm talking to him personally to ask himself, how much of that wealth does he really need? How much of it does he use? You understand?
If you're going to get personal, we're going to be mentioning too many names. So I think there won't be need for the names, because you will end up even calling pastors. There are several of them. Private jets, forget cars. So it's really not a personal thing. I think it should be everyone in general.
I'm talking about them generally. I just gave an example.
Okay.
All of them generally. They should have a care for the masses that puts them into such powers. Yes, religious organizations, the religious leaders, they should have a care for the masses. Some of them have schools that their own church members cannot attend. So they should have a care for their masses. If they do, there will be a lot more less protests.
All right, I want to say thank you to two of my guests, the two of them today, and they've, apart from the fact that they've dealt very well with the topic at hand, they've also made me realize I need to go do my PhD now. So I cannot be intimidated like this. But you know what? As a diversion from what we're talking about, the cash crunch is the reason why we had the most recent protests. And people have Naira stored in their homes. They have personal vaults in their homes. And now that the old notes is no longer in use, nobody has called me, say, Daisy, Leo Asukidi, come. This is 20 million. Take it. Old notes. I don't need it again. What are you waiting for? You call me. I just might have something to do with the money. But that's on a lighter note. I fear that a lot is going to go worse if we don't start dealing with the bad now. We need that information. We need the sensitization. I'm doing my part. But I think people need to spend their money. Put your monies where your mouth is. If you say you care for people, sponsor information. The government said they wanted everyone to begin to do the bank transfer so you can easily trace money. There's a limit to how much you can withdraw. But you've not invested the financial means that you have to put to make sure that I cannot just carry my ATM card to bank A and withdraw 20K. Since that's the limit for the, I'll still carry that same ATM to bank B and withdraw. I have another bank I bank with. I'll carry that ATM and go to bank C and withdraw. At the end of the day, I'll get 100K because I have 5 bank accounts. You've not been able to deal with the issue of the BVN being what limits the money we're withdrawing. We have just 50% of adults that have bank accounts. You've not been able to go to the rural areas and ensure people are opening accounts, teaching them how to use Android devices so they could do the transfers or the codes, to have basic information on how to even read the messages the banks are sending to them. And you're just, so we need information. It doesn't have to be government alone. Religious leaders can sponsor sensitization now. Who said it has to be government alone? Agencies can sponsor. NGO for information. Just open your NGO and say it's just to give information. Who says it has to be NGO for the abused, NGO for the elderly, NGO for... We need to start thinking beyond the regular. We need to think outside the box. We have to help ourselves, because if we don't, while we are dealing with government, we will also be suffering, and we don't want to suffer. I don't want to trek anymore. You should please allow me to enjoy my life. All right, that's the much we're going to take today. We'll upload the video on YouTube, and you can also catch up if you missed out on any parts of the show. We'll be back again next week, same time. Bye.